Hello, everybody in the chess world. Today we're gonna talk about special pawn moves, kind of hidden pawn moves. And well, just to show you what I'm talking about, let us go immediately into the example. So we're gonna go from easy and things that like any beginner will know to stuff that are actually quite difficult. So what am I talking about by, special pawn move? So let us take this position here. This is an invented position that I just input. But yeah, this will be like the first example, kind of like more for beginners. So I always take the example of my neighbor, which is a friend of mine that lives next door, and we play chess often, but he's not professional, so he plays really well and stuff, but he knows nothing about chess. He has never studied. So if I were to show him this position and to tell him, it is white to play, and maybe I will tell him, well, you can see now that we have this rook on b1. This is kind of like a sort of an English opening typical stuff, and we will probably want to play b4. We will like to make this b4, but not immediately because we would like to have a pawn on b4. So, if I were to ask him, like, well, what will you play? And he will probably say, well, you just told me you wanted to play b4, but having a pawn there, so I'd probably play a3. The most logical line with idea of b4. So, if I were to tell him, well, not only a3 is not the right move, b3 is the right move with that plan in mind, he will probably say, well, but aren't you like losing a tempo? We want to play b4 in one shot. And then I will explain him, well, after a3, black has a4. So remember this rule of taking pawns en passant. This is typical from almost any English. So, well, now before we'll receive a takes b3, well, where, well, we made all of these actions for kind of nothing. We haven't really gained an advantage. So, just we won't have a pawn on b4 as we wanted, and we will have this b file open for our rook, but the same thing could be said for black's rook on a8. So b3 has the idea of now we want to continue with a3 followed by b4, and if at any point black were to play a4, then we could then, for example now, answer b4, and there is no a takes b3. Okay, this is quite, simple example, quite known for most people. So, okay, for the moment, nothing special. You have something to add? You like this move? Okay, let us go to the second example. So, I'll have black. I'll pass the first move moves quite quickly. Yeah, this is the position that I wanted to arrive to. So, same example for my neighbor. We are black. It is our turn to move. We've just played b5, and in fact, it was in this position. We play b5, and white, to prevent b4, has just played a3. So again, if I were to ask my neighbor, well, what will you play here? Well, he might just say a5. He probably try to insist with playing this before. And again, I will have to answer basically the same thing. I will tell him, no, not only a5 is not the right move, a6 is the right move. And again, he will be like, come on, man, you keep making me lose tempos for my ideas. And then I will tell him, well, first of all, notice that a5 is not going anywhere. We are not threatening before because we always have this hanging rook on a8. So, and furthermore, well, what about d5? d5 will be already, well, it seems like a good move for white, right? Because the idea is that, our b5 pawn is really weak. So we cannot answer, like, I don't know, c5. So they will just take, this pawn right here. And, well, you could argue that, okay, well, but in that case, I will take on d5. White cannot take on b5 still. They have to react on the center because it's more important. Yeah, but they will. And now, really, there is no defense for our b-pawn. It's just lost. It's attacked twice. We cannot advance it because of the same problem. So going back, yes. So going back, this a6, well, now it's easier to understand this a6, right? We're just solidifying this b5 pawn. And now we're ready to answer d5, a possible d5 with c5. Or in fact, I think we could say that here, well, a good plan will be to play for c5, like knight b7, c5 and stuff. So again, this concept of will be like, okay, we gain some space with b5, but after a3, instead of going like, space greedy with a5, we just solidify that space that we've just won. Okay? Let's go to the third example. This is one of my favorites. Let me search for that position, which is, okay, right here. We'll turn the board, flip the board. So in here, we have this position of the King's Indian. I play this a lot with white, this Saemisch variation with this knight on e2, which, yeah, maybe normally we'll have this same position, but with the knight on c3, maybe, So queen d2 is the main move, which I usually play. And here the main moves are, well, knight e8 is one of the main moves, just to play f5. The other is c6. There is also a5. There's a lot of moves. But quite often on the internet and once on a tournament, my opponents have been playing b6, which seems like a somewhat passive move maybe. But maybe black just wants to play it easy, right? And probably deviate from the main line. So this is kind of like the idea of b6. Now, in here I usually play g4. And, well, if black were to play like the most natural move, so let us say knight c5, I do have knight g3. So, yeah, one of the details is going back. This is kind of like the last chance for black to play h5, if they want to play it. Because, again, if they don't, after knight c5 and knight g3, now black can never play h5 in good conditions. We're going to just take that pawn, and the g file will be open. And, yeah, as you see in the arrows, well, because you might wonder, well, why would black want to play h5? Well, in this position already with knight g3, I have stopped h5, and I do have this really caveman plan of playing h4, h5, h takes g6, and queen h2. Right? It's like a almost feral attack, but it works, because remember, nobody's going to be able to protect h7. I go h4, h5, I take it, then I play g5, and then queen h2 is going to be on h7, So going back, okay, as I said, after g4, this is the last chance for black to play h5. But let us say that they do play it, h5. So now, and for the first time, I'll ask you to get involved and tell me what to play with white. What would you play with white here? So pause the video and think. Yeah, again, h3. Just like as in the last example, first we grab some space, but then against this specific move, we just solidify that space. And as you see with the arrow, well, I mean, let us go back and, okay, show some details. Of course, after h5, if we were to take the pawn, well, now black recaptures in good conditions. The g file has not been open, and the knight is quite well on h5. If we were to advance the pawn after h5, sorry, in here, g5, well, this is, I wouldn't say this is a really bad move, but we are closing it up where we were supposed to attack, right? So, yeah, a little triumph for black in a way. So, again, going back, h5 and h3, and as you can see by this green arrow, well, one of our plans here, because you might think, like, oh, h3, yeah, well, it's not bad and we're solid, but we were trying to play h4 and h5. So what are we doing? Well, we could play knight g3 next turn. That is one of the ideas, because then we will be hitting, g takes h5, and if black were, you might think, okay, but then black will play h4, right? Well, but then we're just gonna go away with the knight. Yeah, we lost a tempo, but we're about to play bishop g5. So then this h4 pawn will be a weakness. So yeah, not so easy for black, okay? It's pretty cool. So again, from now on, I will ask you to stop the video and try to find the right move. But okay, now let us go to a few examples of, well, this will come from modern Benoni. So I think, yeah, let us take this this position. This is a pretty known one. This is Penrose with white against Miguel. So yeah, whoever plays the modern Benoni with either color is probably already spotting what white will play here. But okay, let us begin. So is white to play, and yeah, well, first of all, white does want to get into the action right now because black is about to play b4, right? And that'll be unpleasant. So, the kind of main thing is white thinks, okay, if I play f5 here, which we would like to play f5, and take the strength of the file, well, but I'll leave this big hole on e5. And the problem is that this knight on e5 will be, well, we won't be able to kick it out, not with pawns at least. And B, well, that knight is not only a great centralized piece, it is also a piece that is, yeah, totally, he can totally protect the king. So we really don't want that. On the other hand, if we were to make the other central break e5, well, e5 seems possible, but it is control, right? I mean, black will just take it. So yeah, try to figure out what to play. Remember the subject of the video as a hint. These are pawn moves. And yes, pause the video and think. Okay, so the answer, and this is a classical, resource in this modern Benonis, is basically to play both. We're playing, as Penrose did, e5 first, but after d takes e5, we don't recapture, we just play, now we play f5. And what have we gained? Well, we've gained a lot. So first of all, we've just forced black to take with the pawn on e5. So that means that this knight is not coming to e5. Very, very important. The second thing is we have advanced our e-pawn. So that means that we've vacated the e4 square for one of our knights. Then the g-pawn now is mobile because we force black to take with the pawn. So at some point there might be some tricks with d6. And finally, of course, the action of the f-pawn. So we were probably thinking about f takes g6 or f6, always having in mind, the strength of these two pieces heavy pieces on the f file. So yeah, again, let us see it again because it is quite known, but really in any modern Benoni position or Benoni in general, this is really typical. e5 and after they take f5. So remember that because with both colors. So now we'll see a little example in the Benko Gambit. Yeah, we're still kind of on the modern Benonis. And this is, for me, this is quite lovely. So I used to play this knight c3 variation. I think this is called the Zaitsev variation. Well, a lot of these lines are kind of refuted, like for white. Like, well, for example, in here, bishop f4, I think is one of the main moves. I used to play this bishop c4, which another one of the main moves, and I think this is kind of refuted now. But to refute that, black kind of needs to play knight bd7 right now, which, well, although it's a pretty natural move, it's more natural to play g6, which is, yeah, the move that we see more often in this position. And here, okay, here there's again a sequence that you kind of either know it or you don't know it, as in the last example. But still, and again, having in mind the subject of the video, I'm still asking you to pause the video and think. So yeah, I play e5. This is a theoretical move, and okay, initially, because I played this in tournaments, so initially, my opponents are like, what, e5? So yeah, it is a totally unexpected move, but yeah, after a while, they kind of take it, you gotta take it. And it's still nothing too bizarre, you know. They're like, okay, white sacrificed a pawn, but they have left me with double pawns on the file. The d pawn is now mobile. Maybe someday white will want to do something like that. Okay, but when I play the next move is when their face goes like, oh, what the hell? Which is g6. This is the theoretical move, and it's like my opponents are always like, what is this, Christmas? You know, what is this? You know, is Santa in town? Like, you're gifting me a second pawn in exchange of what? Of healing my pawn chain. You know, they just take it and they're like, what's going on here? So yeah, bishop g5 is the theoretical move that, yeah, this is the justification of such sacrifice, and it's quite amazing because, okay, first of all, we have an obvious threat, which is just to, take the knight in here, and after queen takes, we'll just give this knight c7 check, and yeah, take that rook. So this is quite obvious. But furthermore, we've also added such a big pressure here on d6, because notice that now both bishop g7 and bishop e7 will lose the d6 pawn. I mean, okay, bishop g7 obviously drops this, but bishop e7, this pawn right here, but bishop e7 does it as well. We will take on f6 and then take on d6. So yeah, sorry for all the arrows, but again, it's like, and look at this, because theory goes rook a5. This is the total main move, and I mean, there are a lot of lines here, but it's really hard to play in a way with black, right? Because usually, for example, I've seen stuff like this: queen b3. Okay, now I think that kind of the right move is h6 here. Black should play h6, but I've seen games with, for example, queen e7, just protecting f7, and just knight takes d6, already sacrificing. Bishop takes, king e7, rook d1, and again, I don't even know what's the objective evaluation of this position, but this is hell. This is hell on earth for black. Nobody would like to play this with black. This is kind of terrible. I think, well, again, going back, you had this h6, not queen e7. h6 is the right move in here, but again, it's super chaotic, and I've won a lot of miniatures with this line, so it's quite interesting. So yeah, we'll take this position, which is, yeah, kind of a favorite of mine. I was checking this game some time ago, and this is Eingorn versus Ruck. This is the game, two grandmasters. So in this position with the white pieces, Eingorn played rook a1. So Ruck answered with knight to a5. And yeah, well, I was thinking, like, let us first take these arrows, because really I was thinking what to play here. I mean, really thinking what to do here with white, because I was thinking, okay, yeah, the knight is hidden on b3. We don't want to play queen c2 because, well, rook c8 is coming. So we'll be putting, yeah, the queen on right where black wants it to be. So, well, the other thing is, if I were to play like the safest, most obvious move before, I thought, well, but knight takes e4, and now, yeah, to recover the pawn, with the pawn, we will have to give up our good bishop. So, yeah, I think black will be at least equal there. I didn't like that. So, again, thinking about this position, I was thinking, okay, the move that I really like to play will be bishop c2, definitely. But I thought, well, but then d takes e4, and after b takes e4, well, black has bishop takes f3, and, well, first of all, we have to recapture with the g pawn to keep protecting this c pawn, but then queen c8, queen c7, right? And I don't know, if bishop d3, I guess some rook ac8 or rook fc8, like, we're losing the c pawn. So I was like, really, what to do here? So yeah, here I'll ask you to pause the video and think. Yeah, so okay, the move is bishop c2. This is what Eingorn played. And d takes e4 is what Ruck played, but b4, here's the special pawn move that I totally missed. Because, okay, this move had some calculation involved, and this is the right move. I really like this. The first thing that we can see is that, yeah, okay, knight b3 will be kind of ridiculous because queen takes e4 and that knight is even trapped. But, well, what about bishop takes f3? Because now, after queen takes f3, knight b3 is possible, and they are even kind of hitting our d pawn. But yeah, Eingorn had calculated that g5 is a really strong move, really. This gives white really cool initiative and attack, and I even think, I think black probably has to play e5, something like that, and yeah, just leave us with a pass pawn. So, quite interesting, right? Before going, to another example, what happened in the game? After b4, Ruck went knight c6, Eingorn took the pawn, and after rook c8, well, queen d3. And again, we've kept our good bishop. In fact, we have this big machinery here. We keep some edge. We recover the pawn in a healthy way. We've even played a3 and b4. So yeah, again, right? How this little pawn move made all the difference, right? That b4 really made all the difference. I was quite impressed by this. So, okay, for our next example, I'm going to show you, well, I'll show you things from the beginning because, okay, I actually prepared this St. George opening for one tournament game. I mean, of course, it's kind of like a crappy opening, but, well, for one game. This opening became famous when Tony Miles beat Karpov while Karpov was the world champion with this opening. But okay, he didn't really have to do that much with the opening. So, I remember checking like the most straightforward lines for white. So I was like, okay, what about this a4 line? Because also, okay, I wanted to play something weird, but I didn't want it to lose, like in 8 moves. So, okay, theory goes bishop b7, and after the exchanges, well, we have this thing that, well, our b pawn is protected by the fact that we're also hitting this e4 pawn, right? So now the natural knight c3 will be bad because it will justify our play, right? We will just go b4. But that is why knight d2 was the move that I was checking. And I was, yeah, already afraid of running out of gas, right? Because black is playing in a modern game, but yeah, knight f6. I was like, okay, this might be cool, but bishop d3. And again, in here, I was like, okay, black just ran out of gas. We still have this big weakness on the b pawn here. And what to do now? Because maybe the most natural move will be to go e6. But, okay, that's just, I'll be such a conformist, just playing e6, bishop e7, and castles. And watch out, because I don't know if I'm going to be able to hold that b pawn. So I remember checking this with a board, and at some point I went and asked the computer. I was like, okay, computer, tell me what to play here. And yeah, the computer found something that to me was almost impossible. So yeah, again, the hint is the subject of the video, but still I'll ask you to pause the video and think. Yeah, because the computer came up with c5. And, well, it's not like this is salvation for black. I mean, white can and probably should play c3, just keeping all the positional advantages of, well, a weak opening by black. But what was impressive for me was the detail that is, well, first of all, if we can, include c5 instead of playing e6 immediately, well, let us do it, even if white plays c3. But the second detail was, and what about d takes e5? Well, knight a6, exclaimed by the computer. I really like this sequence, and let us see how this thing continues, because it seemed made for this video. Yeah, it seemed like it was made on purpose for this video, because after bishop takes b5, knight takes e5, we are hitting the e4 pawn, f3, suggestion by the computer, Computer showed me this queen a5, which already, okay, activating the pieces. Now, if queen e2, which might seem like the move that we want to do with white, well, maybe queen a1, trying to, yeah, at least force a draw. So, yeah, going back, bishop e2 was the suggestion by the computer, and here again, it's like, well, now it's not like it's not about playing e6, bishop e7, and castles. No, we're still up pawn down, so we have to play actively. And again, as if it were made for this video, is g5. First of all, really active and with pawn move. After e5, we go knight fd7. We are hitting on e5, and after f4. I mean, what's the subject of the video? Well, yeah, pawns g5, super modern. And, well, really interesting, right? Even if white were to play g3, like, okay, let us be super solid, well, we can even take and play rook g8, and having this sort of modern type of position, really cool, right? And this position is, I don't know, I don't even know who's better. So, quite interesting. So, well, penultimate example, we'll have this position right here, and we are black. So this comes from a particular opening. It's not relevant for the subject, but I'm going to make you a concrete question. So the question will be, okay, it is our turn to move. We could play 1,000 moves here. Most of them will be fine. Even, let us say, I don't know, g6 seems like quite a natural and good move. But specific question is, can we play d5 with black here? Can we play d5 here? And yeah, most specifically even, if we were to play d5, are we to be afraid of d takes e5? Because maybe in calculation we will see that, well, maybe it's not so easy to recover that pawn. So, okay, a lot of information, so just take your time and yeah, pause the video and think. Yeah, the answer is yes, we can play d5. It just requires a particular, piece of calculation with a lot of cool pawn moves involved. Because d5, d takes e5, I'm sure all of you calculated what e6, we just want to play bishop takes e5, bishop e3, developing and protecting the pawn, and knight d7. So bishop b5, pinning that knight. So this will be like the line where the testing line for black, where white is saying, okay, even if I have 3 double pawns on the c file, I do want to keep that c5 pawn. And one detail is that, yeah, a6, bishop a4, yeah, we don't have this typical b5. In a lot of positions like this, in our openings, what we have is, okay, at least the only way for our opponent to keep that pawn is to give up the pair of bishops. They'll have to eventually play bishop takes d7. Well, not right here, because after a6 and bishop a4, there is no b5, because they will take en passant. So the first difficult move that you all had to see in calculation coming up to this position is king d8. It's a cool move, right? King d8. Not bad at all. It was really interesting. Yeah, we naturally, maybe we always are. We're always thinking, okay, whatever I do, I gotta play castles. But yeah, king d8 is already hitting on c5. So you had to see that now. Well, it's not like now white is going to give us the pair of bishops to keep the pawn. No, they'll play c6. Remember the subject of the video. C6 will be the particular move. And the last move that you had to see in calculation, and this is my point, was knight c5 in here. Again, the relationship with the pawns. Instead of, well, we could take it on c6, but let us see that. I just want to show you that. And play rook b8, but development is kind of poor for us, right? This is kind of like the main problem here. Yes, the rook is active on the b file, but we have really poor development. So going back, knight c5 was the last move that you had to calculate, where I think we definitely going to get some compensation for the pawn, because, yeah, pawn takes, bishop takes will be the follow-up. And now, well, now white kind of has to give us the pair of bishops. It is impossible to play something like bishop b3, because of d4 winning immediately. We're just hitting the bishop on e3, and we're hitting, threatening bishop takes g2, which, by the way, will take the rook on h1, so not possible. So going back, bishop takes e5, and yeah, I think computers still really like white, but really, in practical terms, what do you think about this? I mean, we have the pair of bishops. White has an extra pawn, but it's totally, has double pawns on the c file. We might be able to play just, I don't know, king c7 followed by rook b8. I mean, I'm really not impressed by white's play in this position, even if computer says they're much better or something. And okay, now, last but definitely not the least, this is kind of like my favorite example. So we're gonna go into a Grunfeld defense with the white pieces. Okay, so this is the main line of the Grunfeld defense. This is the Grunfeld defense. So c takes d, knight takes d. So I remember that like 10 years ago, a lot of opponents used to play the Grunfeld defense. Not so much anymore in clubs in here, but I've been testing different lines. So I tried a lot of side lines, instead of going for the main e4 move, e4, knight takes e3, b takes e3, and etc. I was trying, weird alternative lines. And at some point, thanks to Yugoslav informator, it was all days, they came up with knight a4, which initially it's like, okay, the knight on the rim is dim, stuff like that. Like, what is that knight doing there? Well, there are a few concrete ideas. The first one is, well, we said that the main line is e4, knight takes, and pawn takes. And yeah, white is happy because they have this big center, but it is black's turn to move. So the main idea of knight a4 is to continue with an e4 that will win a tempo, because black cannot play knight takes a3. So that's the main idea. On the other hand, well, black usually plays bishop g7, castles, and c5. So, well, that knight is also at the time kind of controlling that pawn break. So a few cool ideas. But I found some sort of immediate refutation. Okay, computer probably won't agree, but I mean, this is amazing for me. Some GM find a forcing sequence for black here, and well, it is quite beautiful. But I mean, really, if I show you this position and I tell you, oh, okay, try to equalize immediately with black, you will probably look at me like, don't be ridiculous, let us just take out some pieces, bishop g7, castles, we'll see what happens. In the end, there couldn't be anything forced here, right? There couldn't. But, remember the subject of the video. This is special pawn move. So yeah, if you want, just, again, this is one thing that either you know it or you don't. But if you want, you can pause the video and think. Okay, so they found that e5, this special pawn move, it's like a really interesting attempt of immediately equalizing. And, well, I'd say that is a forcing sequence. Well, what to do here? I mean, we gotta take that pawn. I mean, what else to do? Like, I mean, e3 is incredibly passive. e4, well, knight f6, right? I mean, I think I like black here. So, and through the more, let us go back in here. It's like, this in this sort of Indian defenses, if there's one thing that black cannot do so easily is to play e5. I mean, they've already played d5. What is this? Like, black can play d5 and e5 on the opening, like, and equalize, like, at will. I mean, it's ridiculous, right? So, okay, d takes e5. And now, again, always forcing bishop before check. Okay, nothing to do but bishop d2. And now one of the most beautiful opening moves that I've ever seen that, well, I'll give you whatever time you want, so to search for it. So yeah, pause the video and think here. Okay, again, to me it's kind of like either you know this or you don't know it, but knight e3, really one of my favorite opening moves ever. I mean, so forcing, right? Again, they're hitting our queen and our bishop, so we have to take it. And this is the idea. Bishop takes d2, check, queen takes, and now queen h4 check. And they found a way. They found a way to take advantage of that knight on a4. It is hanging here. So, well, one little detail that I want to show you is you gotta play the correct order. You gotta play bishop takes d2 here, because if you were to give the check first and after g3 playing bishop takes d2, then king takes d2 wins immediately, because the knight is protected, the queen is, so you gotta be precise. On the other hand, well, you can see when you play bishop takes d2 here, the queen is still on the d2 square, so it's forcing the queen to take it. So minor, might seem like a minor detail also for the dogs, obviously, but it's quite important. So, and well, I said that maybe the computer won't agree with what I said. Yeah, because in this position I think the computer still gives quite an advantage for white. But do you really think that that is the case in a practical game? Like the main line continues with white playing queen d4, and white is like saying, okay, let us exchange queens, but let me heal my pawn chain if you do that, right? So black goes queen a5 check, like saying, okay, I won't exchange queens and heal your pawns, and maybe I'll try to win the tempo. White is like, no, you won't win the tempo before. And black now goes queen b6, so like saying, okay, we can exchange queens if you will, but on my conditions. I'd like to recapture a takes b6 maybe, and open up the a file. So okay, there are, I think, like 20, 30, maybe 40 games in the database with this position, and I don't remember the particular results. I do remember the computer still really like white here, but I mean, again, look at the position. White's a pawn up, but they have 3 double e pawns. Well, both sides seem to be a little bit equally undeveloped, So I don't know. I guess, well, let us put it like this. This line is the reason why I stopped playing knight a4 altogether. Okay, it's a personal preference, but I thought this position, I don't like this with white. So quite interesting. So, well, I hope you really like this video. I really enjoyed making this video. To me, these particular special pawn moves are, well, as they say, the pawns are the soul of chess in a way. And really, unexpected pawn moves, it really opens up, I think, our heads, to really search for those and be looking beyond what is mostly obvious about pawns. So thank you a lot for watching, and I will see you next video.